Welcome back. Motorcycle servicing, or any vehicle servicing for that matter, can cost anywhere from £50 to £150 in labour. So why not do this yourself? It's something that I've learned how to do, and in today's video I thought I'd run through and show you how I changed the oil filter and final drive filter on my motorcycle. Let's go. To start with, you're going to want to just clean up the area. Just get a cloth. I washed my bike before this, but just wipe around and make sure there's no contaminants that can go into the oil. After this, there's a few items you'll need, these being a wrench, the oil filter you're going to change, some oil, a bottle or a funnel, I use a bottle to cut this in half, some washers, a bucket, set of Allen keys, and a tool set that includes pliers, things like that. Firstly, you're going to want to check that you can open the fill cap. Turn this anti-clockwise, and this is basically before you drain the oil out, you want to make sure you can actually top it up. Next, undo the drain plug. Yes, if you do it up too tight, that's exactly what happens. I'd recommend gloves, because even with the gloves I did smash my hands a little bit, but yeah. Don't over tighten your fill plug. So yeah, that's definitely loose. Now just make sure once it's loosened, you should be able to undo it with your fingers. This is where you want to put the bucket in, undo it, try not to drop the plug into the oil because it's a disaster if you do, and we're just going to want to let that sit there and drain out. Also open up the fill plug just to let air flow through and help drain the oil quicker. This is where I attempted to use part of the empty bottle, cut this in half. You can then use the top bit as a funnel for later in the video, save that, and then the bottom bit you can use to collect any old bits and pieces. Next up, we're going to want to take the filter out. So to do this, you have a housing on the right hand side of the bike, use your Allen key, and just loosen off all of these bolts in. There probably is a sequence, but I don't tend to do that. You can just loosen them off, and what I tend to do is after I've taken them off and I take off the part, I put the bolts back into the same positions and lay that all down on the floor just so I know which bolt goes into which hole. You can then do the same for the actual cover for the filter. Again, these shouldn't be too tight. You should be able to do these just by hand. If they have been over tightened, then you might need to get something with a bit more torque, like a mini torque wrench or something, but they should be relatively easy to get them off. And again, as you can see, I just replaced the bolts back to the position that they were in, just to make sure I know which ones go in which hole. And there we go. Place that down to one side, make sure you keep all the bolts in place, and that little silver kind of part, that's where the filter is. So you can just pop this out. Shouldn't be too difficult, might need a bit of leverage. Again, the gloves help here. And there is your oil filter. I just checked this to make sure it's got the orange seal, make sure that's still intact and is functioning correctly. And yeah, this is your oil filter. It's always worth maybe taking a picture at this point just so you know which way goes in first. So you know to replace it like for like, the correct way. Use a set of pliers, just makes it easier to pull it straight out. It shouldn't have any resistance, and this is where the bottom half of the bottle comes in quite handy, that you can just kind of plop it straight in there and avoid getting any oily mess anywhere. And yeah, this is what it looks like. It's always worth just inspecting this to make sure there's no metal parts in there. If you have got some metal parts, probably something you want to investigate with a mechanic and just get that resolved before it becomes too much of a big issue. And then you can just wipe out some of the old oil. Obviously, be careful not to leave any paper inside this this area. Next up, you can then get out your new filter. That's what it looks like, nice and clean. And I always tend to put a little rim of or a little bit of oil onto the seals, just so that when it slides in, there's no binding or anything like that. It kind of slots nicely into place. I think this is, again, I saw this somewhere, so which is what I tend to do. And that just fits straight in there. And again, just re-oil the outer rubberized seal, just so that when you're screwing everything back together, it doesn't cause any issues. And then, yeah, put it all back together again. Obviously, making sure you put it back in the right position. This is where it's quite helpful just to have all the bolts that were still in there, and then you can just kind of tighten these up. Again, there may be a sequence for this. I mean, this being quite an old bike, and probably had not the best services throughout its life, I don't think it matters too much. And again, you don't want to over tighten these. Hands tight is absolutely fine, just because otherwise you're just going to put yourself in a world of pain for redoing this again in 2,000 miles or however often you want to service your bike. I tend to do a service once every winter before I'm about to store it or use it less, and then once in summer when I get it back out to use it more frequently. So it gets 2 of these per year. Okay, coming back over to the other side, we can then remove the fill plug. So while I was messing around on the other side, I put the fill plug back in, just so nothing flew in. But now I'm over there, I can make sure nothing does. Stand it up just to get that last little bit of oil out. Actually, this is where I end up getting a piece of wood or an old scaffold board just to stand it up more upright. Obviously, be careful that the bike doesn't tip. In this case, I've put just a wooden chair there, so if it does start to lean past the straight up mark, then it won't fall over. And then at this point, I just, absolutely mess it up because I don't have a funnel. So don't douse your engine with oil. So we'll just wipe that off. But yeah, what I tend to do is just flush through the engine with some clean oil just to get the last bit of the old oil out. Replace the seal or the washer with a new copper washer. Again, if your old washer is okay, which in this case it was, but I tend to just do it because I've got a set, and while you're there, you may as well change these over. Yeah, just put a new seal on if you can. They're very cheap from Amazon. You can just buy a set. And then, yeah, tighten this back up. Again, finger tight. And then you probably do need a torque wrench for this, but I just kind of, clearly, that's why I smashed my hand up the last time. Just tighten it as much as I think is okay. Yeah, so I've finally learned my lesson and gone and got a funnel. And this is where you need to start filling the oil up. There really is no rush for this. It's always better to underfill and then just top it up to the point where you need to, then overfill it and have to try and then pump out oil. That's always a nightmare. I did that the first time on my old bike. So you'll see at the bottom there's that little fill window. This should start to fill up, and there should be two markings on there, low and a high point, and you want to get it, in between there as best you can. It helps to have the bike more upright as well, which is where the wood comes in. And here I'm just showing you to check the fill seal and make sure that's all okay, which it is. Cool. At this point, you're going to want to start the bike and just let the oil run through. While it's happening, I tend to just walk around, check for any leaks, check that there's nothing that I haven't timed up. You might get a bit of smoke at this point, and that's absolutely fine. It's just probably some old oil burning off if you spill any, like I did. Yeah, just checking for leaks, make sure nothing's coming out of the oil filter housing or under there. Now you'll notice that the level's dropped. That's because the oil filter has been primed. So you don't want to run it for too long. Then you want to just take it off and refill the levels back to, I tend to go slightly over halfway. And that's just because if I'm riding and there is a small leak, then I've got enough in there to get me back home. So yeah, you'll see I kind of fill it up to the top level. And that's obviously because this is slightly leaning to the left as well, so it's not a true dead center. But yeah, there we go. Now we move on to the final drive oil. So you can see there's the fill plug on top, drain plug on bottom. Again, always just make sure that you can open the fill plug before you take off the drain plug, because what you don't want to do is drain out all the oil, realize you can't undo it, and then have to take it to a mechanic or something. It's way easier to take it to a mechanic if you can ride it down. Yeah, and then loosen up the drain plug. Again, you'll see I've managed to over tighten this, and yeah, there we go. Second absolute disaster. So yeah, just in slow motion for your enjoyment. Managed to actually slice my finger open this time through the gloves on my exhaust, so great job. Put something soft there maybe next time. But yeah. So once that's open, you can use the same bucket that you had for the engine oil. Just loosen off this nut and let the final drive oil drain out. Obviously there's a lot less. And then again, you just want to inspect that drain plug, make sure there's no metal bits on there that you might need to investigate either yourself or with a mechanic. Yeah, so while this is draining, I go and get a plaster for my finger and fix up, make sure there's no blood there. Clean off the drain plug, put a brand new washer on there again. I think that I didn't have a washer on there the last time, which probably explains why it was a bit hard to get off. And then yeah, we can just put this back in. And you get some final gear oil. Usually it's quite universal, but just check that you get the right one for your bike. Comes with a handy little nozzle, so we don't need a funnel this time. And again, just fill this up to basically the top of the fill plug until it starts draining out. It won't overfill, and basically the fill plug is your mark of how much you need in there. And then yeah, we can just put the fill plug back in. That's the final gear oil done. It's kind of why I like these sort of bikes, because it doesn't take a lot of maintenance. It's not a chain or anything. You just do this I usually do this once every 2 oil services. So once per year I'll change the final gear oil, more than enough. Finally, disposing of your old engine oil. any old plastic bottles you've got you can use. Don't do that because you'll ruin a pair of socks. So yep, that was the third absolute disaster. Again, slow motion just for your pleasure. No idea what I was thinking. Yeah, it was about half an hour into a 10-minute job at this point, so I'd kind of yeah, nice round off to the morning. And then yeah, basically, so just make sure you dispose of your old engine oil. You can do this at any recycling centre. I tend to keep any old plastic bottles lying around that I have for, in this case, this is snow foam bottles. So fill these back up, put the lids on, and then next time you go into the tip to get rid of some bits, you can just drop these off as well. Job done. Good stuff. And that's really it. Quick guide, how to service your bike. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.